How to get your dream job, tips from a CEO. All right, so I've interviewed thousands of people, and there's a lot of things that I've learned as being that interviewer, the person that's gonna hire. And it's very different than what you'll hear from other strategists and recruiters who focus more on the other side. So before we jump in, the couple topics we're gonna cover is number one is research, number two is marketing, then you have networking and sales. Now, if that doesn't sound like a typical job process and job application, it's because it's very different. And so let's just jump right into this and start going so you guys can really learn. But make sure to stick around to the end for some very valuable tips. Okay, so the first section of this is research. And the reason why research is so important is you want to make sure that you find the right job for you, whether that be how much money you're making, whether it's a cultural fit, whether your skills match it. I think a lot of people get stuck in I need a job. And yes, of course, money is important and we understand that. But finding that right fit will make sure that you're happier and you'll succeed better and the company will pay you more because you have the skills they need. So really take that time to research opportunities, learn what the company culture is, learn what skills they're looking for, understand that job description. And with all these AI tools out there and the ease of applying to different outlets, I don't mind the idea of applying to a whole bunch of locations, but really also try to find what your dream 100 is or your dream 50 and spend time learning about those jobs and analyzing. And that's really what we're gonna focus on is more of your dream job than just I need a job. And so as we go through that, really focus on determining what your skills are, what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, and find a way to match that with an employer. Of course, on top of that, the culture is so critical because you want to make sure that your personality fits with them. So you're looking for that long-term career. Now, the next step in this is, of course, marketing. And with marketing, this is very different than what people normally think of, but marketing is your cover letter, your resume, your LinkedIn, your social media, how you present yourself, how you dress during an interview. All of these things build to your brand or your marketing. And so you want to make sure that you analyze all of this. So if your social media isn't professional, if you have things that you don't want employers to see, make it private. Step one, make anything you can private if they're not designed to be seen by employers, because let me promise you, they are looking as you get farther in that application process. They're gonna pull up anything they can find. They'll Google you. So you wanna make sure that all of that is as professional as possible. Now, I would say that the one thing that you wanna make sure that you have public is your LinkedIn. As I'm recruiting, I do really like looking at LinkedIn. I'm a very visual person, and so what happens is the way the LinkedIn presents itself with images and links, I can go find previous job experience a little bit easier for the way I learn, and then I'm able to go click on that company, learn about the company, look at the company size. A lot of times it's more visual, how long you've spent there, if it's been 1 year, if it's been 6 months, we can look at the job history. And most people spend more time filling out their LinkedIn. So do everything you can there, do a cover letter, do an about me, and here is where it's important to match marketing to the research you've done, that job description. So once you identify that ideal job, you really want to align all of your public portfolios to that ideal job. So if you really want to be, let's use publicist since we're a PR firm, if you really want to be a publicist, you want to make sure that everything in your LinkedIn is tiered towards the experience that you have that would make you a really good publicist. Your about me would be tiered towards being a good publicist. Your images, even your cover photo, anything you can do would be tiered towards that job position. If you have certifications or awards, again, all of it is going to be marketed towards becoming a publicist. So I hope that makes sense, and that's why you're doing the research first. And if you're applying to a whole bunch of different jobs and they're not all publicists, let's say some's a copywriter, some's different fields because you're maybe newer in your career and still not exactly sure, still pick your dream job, set everything up for that, and then what you're going to do is when you're applying to those jobs, ideally customize it. So if you were going to apply it to be a publicist and you're going to apply to be a staff writer and you're going to apply to be something else, a marketing expert, those resumes should be different and those cover letters should be different. The nice thing is with ChatGPT, you can make several variations and you can implement those changes very quickly without too much work. And I will tell you that it's worth the time because a lot of those application tracking softwares, ATSs, are going to automatically remove people that don't have specific keywords in there. And so especially with bigger companies, they won't even get past the first round just because the AI is going to say, hey, this isn't a good match for us. So it's really important that you do that market research and then you do that marketing to make sure that you align and you've built your personal brand. Now, the next step is probably not in the order that you would think it would be, but it's networking. So networking and sales are our next two pieces. With networking, this is where LinkedIn really becomes important. So let's just say that you're doing your research and you've got it down to 10 local companies that you would really want to work for. These are your 10 dream companies, your dream, in marketing we would call them, dream clients, whatever it is. And what you want to do is start reaching out to individuals in that company and try to build, and this is what we use in sales, try to build that contact that's going to help you, that champion is what we call it. And so what you're going to do is network with different people. You can use LinkedIn and reach out to them directly and say, hey, my name's Scott. Like, I saw you worked at Otter PR. That's the company that I own. And I'm really interested in learning more about the company culture, what your day-to-day is, and would love to, grab a coffee with you if you don't mind. Whatever that is, you can do that with 50 people in the company. You can do that with as many people as you want. I would say go one at a time and give them 24 to 48 hours to respond before you go to the next person. But this is the marketing piece, because what's going to happen is if you're trying to apply to companies like Google and Microsoft and all of these major tech companies, or even smaller startups that are very exclusive, we get thousands of applications per job. If you have an internal champion, you're going to go directly to an interview. So basically anyone that gets referred internally in our company and in most companies that I am experienced with, they go directly to an interview. So if you think about it, by finding that champion, you can do that before you apply or after you apply during that process for one of your dream jobs. You're going to be able to almost guarantee an interview, and you'll have a leg up because you'll learn about the company culture ahead of time, and you'll be able to do a lot more research about that job position, what the expectations are, and how you'll fit into that company, and then maybe even skip the interview if it's not a good fit for you. And I think that's going to be a huge piece of, finding that job that's 60,000 versus 160,000 is really using networking, and not necessarily the network that you currently have, but the network that you're able to build through good communication skills. Now with communication skills, we really jump into sales. With sales, this isn't, again, what people standard talk about when it comes to interviewing and recruiting, but if you think about it, your entire job is to sell your experience to that employer. So it's really important that you match with the research that you've done, your experience, and practice potential questions. So with sales, if you think about it, repetition is key. Most salespeople do not come in day one ready to sell and closing deals. They have to walk through objections over and over again, learn what the best answer is, make mistakes. So the more practice you have, the better you will do. And you can do this just by Googling common interview questions, and there's probably a list of 100. What I would do is not memorize them, because you don't want to sound canned and robotic, because that will have no personal experience and that'll have no personal connection. But you want to have specific points you want to hit and have basically that story outlined already. So if someone says, what was a time you had to manage multiple projects, you'll know exactly what time you wanted to talk about and what top 3 things you want to hit. But even better, if you've done your research properly, then you're going to want to be able to hit specific milestones that they're looking for. And when in sales, that's the key thing, is your job is to solve a problem they're having and add value to their company, because they want to make money and they want you to come in and solve something, or they wouldn't be hiring you. So once you can figure that out, you'll get almost 100% of those jobs. So if you think about it, okay, so we have to add value and potentially solve a problem. And you're that expert that can do that. So let's use the PR example. So if you're going to be a publicist and we're hiring you, you're going to solve the problem of getting a client into the news and making sure a client is happy. And the reason why Otter PR, the company that you're recruiting, or the company that you're getting a job offer for, wants you, is because they're going to make money by making a client happy and by getting them in the news. So you're solving that problem and adding value by longevity of a client. So it's that simple, and that's going to be the big key that a lot of people miss. Now, there's some other tips in sales that I'd recommend. So one of the best interviews I have ever seen and ever been involved in, the person came in with a presentation ready to go. But here's the trick. They didn't just sit down and say, hey, I have a presentation. They did the standard interview. They asked as many questions as they could. And the questions are critical because they're learning, again, more market research about what that job's looking for, what the hiring interview is looking for. The more you can get the interviewer talking, the better you're going to do, because they're going to have a feel-good feeling at the end of it. It's the same thing with sales. If I can have a sales call and have the person I'm talking to, the prospect, do most of the talking, I'm winning. And then I just need to answer the questions that they have or figure out how. So I've learned what their pain points are, and I've learned how to add value based on the questions they've given you. Now, back to this presentation example, at the end of the interview, the individual was like, hey, so I built a kind of a simple presentation of the things that I think you guys need and improvements I can make in day one. Do you mind if I take an extra minute and show you this presentation? And we were thrilled to see this. It was a marketing role, and they were going to do social media for us, and it was amazing. Now, the presentation wasn't perfect. It didn't answer all the pain points, but what it showed is that that person really wanted the job, which is critical, and it showed that they were prepared and they had ideas to come in, so it wasn't someone that we had to train from ground up. And that's going to be critical, and that's what you see with, higher end consultants getting a job. And that's the difference between entry level, again, making $30,000, even if you're entry level, and making $60,000 to $80,000, just because you're already coming in being able to solve a problem and solve a solution. The last couple things that we're going to cover is just making a general connection. You really want to have a conversation with that person. Personally, I hate being in an interview where I feel like I'm being talked at. Especially, I'm a little bit more outgoing. I want to do the talking, like I said. So when someone asks, tell me about your experience, tell me about your background, I think it's best to go with that elevator pitch. So how do I get this all into 60 seconds and then ask a question? Hey, did you have any follow-up questions? Was there anything you'd like to hear more about? So it's the same thing with sales. When I do a pitch, my pitch is 1 minute. And that's because people get bored and they zone out. So if you go 2, 3, 4 minutes into your background and experience, they're gone. They didn't hear half of it. They're thinking about their next meeting. They're busy. Now, if you do that elevator pitch and then you re-engage the hiring person, that interviewer, into what would they like to learn more about, that's when you're going to get them more targeted to what their pain points are in the first place, and that's going to help you really succeed. And the next piece of this is energy. So it's really important that you come in enthusiastic and excited, and I talked about this before, but generally wanting the job is going to be a critical piece of this. That's why it's so important to really focus on, your dream 10, your dream 100, whatever it is, and figure out more about the company, do that research, prove that you want to be there, have that presentation, make sure that presentation is branded to them, and just be excited for that opportunity. I know it's really easy to get nervous, but by asking a lot of questions about that responsibility, about what pain points they're trying to get solved, it'll make it more conversational and ideally, hopefully, make you less nervous. All right, and so finally, and this is standard, is you want to make sure, it's same thing with sales, after you do your interview and you thank everyone, when you leave, you want to, within the next day, you want to make sure to send a follow-up email, say thank you so much for the interview, it was great having you. Ideally, pull out some information from the interview and bring it back up. Maybe there's a question you didn't know the answer to and you could answer it then. It's never a bad thing not to know an answer. Just say, hey, let me get back to you. Make sure you get back to them, of course. It's the same thing with sales. But then you can do that in your follow-up. If you did have a presentation, send that in the presentation. Make sure you send them a copy of your resume, which they'll already have, but it's still nice. And then also any other material that you might need. Now, I did leave one other thing out. During that actual interview, same thing with sales again, it's important that you have a copy of your cover letter and resume. And I would bring several. I'd have a notebook with maybe 10 to 20 copies, because if you go on site, you might have multiple interviews with multiple people, and each interview could have 3 to 5 people in there. I've done an interview with up to 10 people before, and let me tell you, it was a round table. That one scared me. I was able to get the job offer, but I had resumes for every single person at that table. So I would say come prepared. Again, back to the marketing piece, do nicer stock images or nicer stock paper and invest in that, because it's going to be really worth it at the end. All right, so we covered a lot in this video, but like I said, you want to make sure that you're doing a lot of research, you're preparing your marketing and your brand to the best of your ability, you're taking care of that network and trying to find that champion to help you get the job. And then at the very end, you've practiced your routine, your sales, so that way you can go in there and close the deal. All right, thanks so much. If you guys had any follow-up questions, please make sure to leave a comment and subscribe, turn on your notifications, and I appreciate it. Until next time.